Now, the political heat and controversy over Congress leader Rahul Gandhi's remarks about how Indian soldiers are allegedly being beaten up by the Chinese at the border, that controversy has exploded even further now. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar has taken on Rahul Gandhi directly, says we shouldn't use words like Pitai against the army. Jaishankar says criticizing our army isn't right. We must trust the Jawans who are standing guard, says S. Jaishankar in a pointed response to Rahul Gandhi's comment. Take a look.
If we were indifferent to China, who sent the Indian army to the borders to defend us? If we were indifferent to China, why are we today pressing China on disengagement and de-escalation? Why are we saying publicly that our ties are not normal? So we have no problem if there is political differences, if there is even political criticism. I have heard sometimes that my own understanding needs to be deepened. When I see who is giving the advice, I can only bow in respect. But I think we should not directly or indirectly criticize our Jawans. Yeah. When our Jawans, sir, are standing, sir, our Jawans are standing, sir, in Yangtze, in Yangtze at 13,000 feet. Yeah. At 13,000 feet, they are standing there defending our borders. They do not deserve to have the word Pitai. The word Pitai should not be used for our Jawans, sir. Sir, our Jawans are standing their ground, so they should be respected, they should be honored, they should be appreciated. This is not something.
Gaurav Sawant, who's just returned from Tawang after becoming the first journalist, on site after the tussle that took place a few days ago, is with me live. Gaurav, External Affairs Minister Jaishankar, he doesn't take any shortcuts when he needs to convey a message. And this message was clearly for, what Rahul Gandhi said about Pitai happening to Indian soldiers at the border. Putting that in perspective also, Gaurav, you've just returned from Tawang. What would you say to this ridiculous assertion that, Indian Jawans are in some way not dominating those positions, which is what Minister Jaishankar is also saying?
Shiv, you put it aptly. It's a ridiculous statement to say Bharatiya Jawano ki pitai ho rahi hai. As Rahul Gandhi put it, because the facts are just the opposite. The facts on ground are, it's the Indian soldiers who are on the dominating heights in Tawang. It's the Indian soldiers who are able to successfully push back the Chinese soldiers who initially were numerically superior. And Shiv, if I give you the lay of the land, the Indian soldiers are on a height. The Chinese soldiers tried to dislodge them from their height. From what my sources on ground tell us, there is a breast wall or a chest wall, which is about a rock wall of loose rocks pieced together, yes, which is about 5 feet, 5.5 feet high. The Chinese tried to break that rock wall and they did not succeed. In fact, they were not only pushed back, from what my sources tell me, subject to confirmation officially from the army, several Chinese soldiers were actually detained for some time by Indian soldiers before they were subsequently released. And so this was a show of strength by India on ground. Shiv, not just that day, but even subsequently, though there's been total disengagement in that area, India is dominating the heights, not just there, but at multiple other locations, and that is dominating them as of now. So that the Chinese do not try something in the days, weeks or months ahead. There are standby units that are already deployed in certain areas who can go and strengthen troops wherever required. Apart from that, Shiv, we've reported very extensively on the infrastructure build-up. That is where India is actually sadly lacking. And this is, lacking for decades. Infrastructure was ignored. So now tunnels are being built, highways are being built. Arunachal Pradesh highways, frontier highways are coming up. That will take time. So from what my sources tell me, Shiv, we'll have to retain the situation, contain the situation for another couple of years. Once this infrastructure is completely in place, India will actually be dominating the adversary on those heights, whether it's in Arunachal Pradesh or in Sikkim or actually even in Ladakh. It's only the Barahoti sector where a lot more needs to be done.
Gaurav, you've just returned after a full week in Tawang and Yangtze. The question I want to ask you is obviously, army soldiers, army officers deployed there, they don't have the time to, watch television and look at the political debates that are taking place over Tawang. But, a comment from Rahul Gandhi like, Pitai ho rahi hai hamari jawanon ki, is any attention being paid whatsoever to this kind of thing? Are soldiers there wondering about the, unbelievable disconnect between, political mileage and reality of what's happening on the border?
Shiv, it's a very worrying aspect because, multi-domain operations, and this is what the armed forces talk about now. Information warfare is a very important weapon of war. Whether you're building the morale or you're demolishing the morale of your soldiers who are actually on ground. So you tell me, when somebody says, "Aapke hamare jawanon ki pitai ho rahi hai," the ground reality is just the opposite. Hamare jawan actually pitai kar rahe hai. And there is some bits of information that we cannot even give out right now because the situation remains tense. But there are several things that the Chinese would be very embarrassed about. They came with certain equipment that they left behind. When they retreated, when they were actually chased back to their camp. So, the Indian Army, and Shiv, you've reported that first in Delhi, that the Indian soldiers actually climbed on the other side and chased the Chinese back to their camp. And they have certain items in their possession, whether it's ever disclosed in public or not. The fact remains that India is dominating those heights, and they've been dominating Yangtze for quite some time. The Chinese have tried to dislodge India even before. Each time they have failed, and it's a huge psychological setback to the Chinese that India dominates them here. Also remains the fact, Shiv, the Indians are protecting our own territory. The Chinese are actually crossing 700 kilometers of occupied Tibet and then trying to defend the line of actual control in that area. So for the Chinese, they are far more vulnerable than India because their supply chains, God forbid, should the balloon go up, become very vulnerable.